This is the LiPetri Show. What's going on, everybody? We have here a great guest, a fellow millennial, John Schneidawin, the founder and president of Millennial Leadership Inc. and co-founder and chair of Millennial Leadership Coalition. What's up, buddy?
How's it going, Mike?
I'm super excited to have you on. As I know, as you just told me, this is your first podcast. Is that right?
First podcast. Been listening to a ton, but this is the first time I'm appearing on one. So
Well, there you go. I'm honored, buddy, to have you on here as the inaugural podcast for you of many to come.
Thank
so
you.
I'm looking forward to it. As many of you don't know, the Millennial Leadership Coalition is a part of a dynamic and forward-thinking organization, Millennial Leadership Inc., that John founded and is president of, that empowers and supports the emerging leaders of the Millennial and Gen-Z generations. Comprised of highly motivated and visionary individuals, this coalition is dedicated to driving positive change and shaping the future of various industries, communities, and societies. And I love this. As a fellow millennial, I mean, you and I have known each other for several years now, and we've both been in lockstep in the sense of trying to shape the future of not only Long Island, not only New York State, but this country as a whole, of what direction does it need to go. And from the ground up, I mean, I love that you started this, and I love that you're all about it, but why did you do this?
Yeah, I mean, it was a couple of years in the making when we, me and the other co-chairs created a Millennial Leadership Coalition. I was working for a financial institution. I was doing business development for them. Found myself kind of in these young professional groups circling, in the business realm. And after about a year of going to all these different meetings with the various young professional groups around Long Island, I realized that there was a lot of things in common, but nobody was communicating with one another. So you got these organizations with these young professionals, and they're talking about how hard it is and the challenges they're facing with how affordable it is here, but nobody was really kind of crossing their networks. So my intent of this was to break down the silos of these young professional groups, get the leaders of those organizations communicating with one another, and trying to effectuate real change that could make an impact for the region, for our generation and the ones that come up.
So I get the intent now, but anything from your background that motivated you, like from this business development side of when you worked, but is there anything that from your personal side of things that also pushed you in this direction?
Oh, yeah, definitely. So I started real young when I started a family. I was actually 21 years old when I purchased my first home here on Long Island. But that was something that I did with my fiance at the time. It was something that I know that we wouldn't have been able to do if we were solo. So, and it was something we knew we wanted to do in order to have a family. And while the market was good, we purchased the home in 2009, right after the financial crisis, and there was actually a lot of government assistance out there for that. So,
right.
Worked with the Long Island Housing Partnership, got some grants for down payment assistance for rehabilitation costs. I worked with Sony May, got grants for that.
Oh, nice.
For closing cost assistance, and then even my employer at the time had worked with LAHP for the Employer Assisted Housing Program, and they provided funding as well towards it. So without all of that assistance, I still probably wouldn't have been able to afford that first home with me and my fiance at the time. It's now my wife. So it was a constant struggle. We got all the grant money, and we're 21, 22 years old.
Yeah. You got a house now?
Yeah, got a house, and then with the house comes all the bills. And,
yep.
And then we wanted to have a family young because I wanted my kids to have their grandparents involved in their life. And we just realized that it's not getting any easier. We had our first kid a year after we bought the house. Then we had our second 3 years after that. So, and with each kid came additional expenses, and we just had to try to figure out a way to make it work. So for me, it was a constant struggle as a young professional trying to make it work here on Long Island, trying to have a family, and really kind of hearing the same challenges that were being faced throughout the various groups that I was attending. I felt like we should be able to do something here. And the millennial generation is one of the largest generations around. We have a lot of power behind us when it comes to our vote and us being civically engaged. So I wanted to create an organization that really kind of cultivated that power and brought the millennial leaders together to help, really work on and strategically think about solutions to the challenges we were facing to hopefully make Long Island in particular at the time more sustainable economically and environmentally.
So now creating this strategic dialogue, how is Millennial Leadership Coalition structured, and how is it different, say, from other groups on Long Island, that other networking groups or business groups or anything associated? You have the MECO ones, you have the HIALI, you have LIA. Those are our flagship for Long Island, both of those organizations. And then we have the Chambers of Commerce, and the Nassau Council Chambers of Commerce, the Suffolk Council Chambers of Commerce. And then beyond that is those independent ones. And then within, you have all these different networking groups. So how is the Millennial Leadership Coalition different? How is it structured? What is the format if people were to become a part of it, or how to become a part of it? Can you elaborate on all that?
Yeah, sure. So, similar to actually what the Suffolk County Alliance of Chamber does for the chambers that are throughout Long Island, is it's an organization that kind of acts as an umbrella to those organizations to help really create some type of collaboration, some type of uniform effort. So what MLC is really about is uniting millennial groups together through their leadership. And there's really not another organization out there that focuses on millennials and the next generation without being very specific to an industry, a sector. Even there are wonderful organizations out there, but some of them are a little bit more specific as to the types of millennials they serve, or the types of young professionals that they focus on. MLC is inclusive to all. We want to make sure that every millennial, every Gen Z that's looking to stay here on Long Island, that's looking to stay in the state of New York, has the network that they need to make that possible. And really, there's no other organization that I can tell is doing that as effectively. So
I love that, because what do they say? Your net worth is your network, right?
Yeah, yep.
That's it. That's
a good one.
and that's good that you're fostering that and bolstering networks within the generation. What is the exact? So let's get this timeline correct. Mm-hmm. The millennials is what age group right now?
So it's 81 to 96.
81 to 96, and then Gen Z is 97.
97 to like 2011. It's about like a 15-year gap for each generation.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy. That's wow. That's gonna be, so that's very interesting, because that's what I'm looking at. Is I saw this Walton Family Foundation Millennials and Generation Z Agents of Change survey that was taken in I have here January 12th through 2021. Mm-hmm. It was a nationwide survey of 1,000 Americans age
2,000.
1,000 Americans for Gen Z and 1,000 Americans for millennials.
Yeah.
Right. So 2,000 total. So 2,000 Gen Z and millennials were surveyed here, and they had some key findings. I want to talk about these key findings and expound on it.
Absolutely.
Specifically, they say the key findings here from this survey show Gen Z millennials remain optimistic about their generation's future prospects. 3/4 believe most people in their generation will have the opportunity to succeed if they work hard, and 2/3 believe most will be able to move up the economic ladder. Over a half believe all people in their generation have the opportunity to achieve the American dream. But they are less positive about how things are going currently for their generation, with only 26% saying things are going well right now. There's a couple more findings, but I want to start off with that.
Sure.
So what are your thoughts in the sense of Gen Z and millennials remaining optimistic about the future, but yet current situation no bueno? Why is that? What do you what do you think?
It's personally, it's really about affordability. From how much money it costs to find a home, to be able to attain a home, to continue your education. Even the cost of gas is as astronomical compared to what our previous generations paid for. So overall, the cost of living is really kind of making it very challenging for us right now. But as a generation, I think we're equipped with the tools we need to make a change. It's going to be about getting together and really fostering collaboration that can get that.
Do you think that's the reason why we have that positive focus, is because we have that technology surrounding us that it could allow us to achieve it?
Yeah, I do. I think it has a lot to do with that. I think it has a lot to do with knowing that there was a time where it was easier, and knowing that there's a path that we could take to get there. It's just about, like I said, collaborating with one another to try to utilize the brain power that we have, the willpower that we have, and the kind of ability that we have to access and utilize the technology that's out there right now to its fullest capability.
Yeah, I like this, because the key findings go on to say most 7 in 10 believe their generation will be able to adapt to overcome or create change to get rid of obstacles in their way. 6 in 10 believe their own generation will be a driver of positive change. Half believe the generations younger than their own will also play a role. Mm-hmm. And they see themselves, quote, personally playing a role in creating change. When asked who specifically will drive change, the top 2 responses were elected officials in the future and me. I found that very interesting, how that millennials and Gen Z, we as a generation, feel like that we can just take hold and effectuate the difference we wish to see through our own actions and through our own efforts and in the finishes saying, how will they make change? Voting, engaging with charitable organizations, which I thought was actually really unique.
Yeah.
And through starting or working for businesses and nonprofits that make change. They are entrepreneurial, with almost 3 in 4 say they'd want to start their own businesses someday.
Yep.
I found that extremely unique.
Yeah, and those numbers, over 50% of the 2,000 that were surveyed all responded to that as those top 3.
Yeah, I find that, but if you really look at it, how millennials as a whole, they take that active effort where it's just, I'm going to create my own business, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, and I almost, in the one sense, we always get labeled with that we're impatient, right? But in the other sense, I look at it saying, well, that hustle, that drive can push us to the next level. But we've also, think about also what we've incurred during our lifetime at such young ages.
Yeah.
In comparison. Mm-hmm. So, we've at a young age, we've been around, or introduced, I should say, to terrorism.
Yep.
Right? Through the highest level.
Yep.
Then we go into the economic recession.
Yeah.
And then now in the pandemic, all at peak years, mind you, during our growth.
Yeah, usually when some of the most financially kind of reliant decisions are being made in someone's career and their life, these things have hit us, from when we get out of high school to when we're leaving college to when we're about to, normally start a family. So
pandemic, let's go back to 2001. 2001 is now you're cultivating as a young boy, young girl, your sense of self, your emotions, your personal connections. Then you have 9/11, which affected a lot of us here on Long Island, a lot of our friends, a lot of our family members who were either involved or knew someone involved. That has emotional consequences, right? Sure. Then on top of it, you go into the economic recession. Many people now are graduating high school and college who are millennials, right?
Yep.
Boom, right when your first job, economy collapses.
We're still in the thick of it. They think they know what they're doing, and then all of a sudden that whole industry or sector is like not even an option at the moment.
Right. And then now you go into the pandemic hits, where now it's around the 27 to 33 category.
Might be looking to get married, might be looking to have a family.
Right, looking to buy a house.
Buy a house, exactly.
You were ahead of the game with that, but the average person is buying their home when they have a wife and kid, or a husband and children. Or thinking that next step. So now you're looking at this in the most pivotal situations of growth. You're looking at cataclysmic changes in a lifestyle, and that's why I say about how the remaining positive, to say like, no, our future's still bright. It's like, I look at that as truly the epitome of an American. Yeah. Because Americans have always had hope.
Yep. Hope and resiliency.
And 100%. And our generation has truly embraced that.
It is.
To the maximum effect.
And that's why, for me, it was such an important part of what I wanted to accomplish by bringing the leaders together of these groups was to harness that, and as millennial generation, we're one of the largest voting blocks out there. So when I look at that study, it came out probably 2-3 years after the genesis of MLC came about. It reinforced everything that, I've been working on. And it's really what made me want to take the next step in bringing on Millennial Leadership Incorporated and incorporating that organization.
Yeah, and I think that's exactly what we need. And you were speaking about affordability, right?
Yeah.
And I think this survey goes right into it with one of the top barriers, extremely or very big problem for me. Just shy of 50% says not being able to afford to buy a home.
Yep. The 2,000 people they surveyed, that's one of the biggest challenges.
Not being able.
And just think about what that does to an individual. If you don't know that you're going to be able to set up roots in a community, how much can you invest in doing anything else for that community? Well, you got to focus on your job, because really when it comes down to it, you might need 2 to afford to stay.
Long Island, you need 2.
Yeah, at least.
Long Island, you need 2.
Yeah, you do.
Hands down.
Yeah, or multiple people to purchase a home in many cases when you're young. So really, when it comes down to it, we're as a community, as a region, because of how high the cost of living is here, we're losing our volunteers in many ways. We're struggling to have volunteers for our community organizations, like our firefighters, for
Huge.
Our athletic organizations that really establish that community and that kind of camaraderie within a community. For whether it's soccer or basketball or baseball, we're losing those individuals that once had the time, because they only had to work one job. Now they have to work 2. They can't be out on the field and helping our young athletes, cultivate and learn about how to be a team, and it's unfortunate, So in that, you see a lot of these premier leagues coming up, and they're reaping the benefits from that. They're charging a ton of money, and we have some communities that are missing out on the opportunities to get their kids into athletics because we just don't have the volunteer base that we once had.
And then you add in also your churches, your social organizations, just what people used to go to just to hang out and socialize with others, right? There's different parties, different events, different dinners, etc. Those are starting to diminish. The attrition rate on that is enormous.
Yeah, and that's, again, pandemic, it did teach us that there is value in doing things virtually, but there is so much more value in doing things face-to-face and in person. It's just you find a way to establish trust in a much quicker way, in a much more real way, and with trust comes a lot of progress. So for MLC, one of the key components of that is creating that kind of norm back to society, bringing the networking and the camaraderie and getting together in person. That's one of the reasons why, I'm looking to have, we have the chapter here in Long Island. I'm looking to bring one to New York City and to the capital region of New York, where, it's the 3 most densely populated areas in New York State, to try to make sure that there is an opportunity out there and there's a platform for young professionals to go and get to really know who are the people in their community that are making the difference and the change.
With MLC on Long Island, what are you looking to have in terms of events, in terms of the meetings, in terms of growth ultimately? How would that be effectuated?
So one of the first events that we threw was actually right before the pandemic hit. It was actually it was in Amityville. It was at the Gray Barn facility in Amityville. It's a beautiful location. They allowed us to utilize their common area. We had over 75 people attend, and it was all about millennials and housing.
Love it.
Yeah, and we had the CEO of Long Island Housing Partnership, Peter Elkowitz, was on the panel. The executive director at the time, Roger Weaving, from the Huntington Township Housing Coalition, and then a gentleman named Todd Poole, who is an economist and kind of works for public-private organizations, help really bring about the data that they need to make decisions financially. And the good thing about that was it was a really nice kind of, I like juxtaposition. So, some people were like, why would you have a millennial housing event at a multifamily development where majority of those homes are not accessible? They're just really a lot of money. They're outside of that normal range for a millennial to be able to afford. And the way I look at it is they're a business. They have to make sure that the margins are there, that things pencil out. But they were a part of Long Island Housing Partnership, and they offered affordable units. So there's a give and a take, and they were willing to offer those affordable units. So to me, it was about bringing bringing awareness to the housing options that are out there, and having Long Island Housing Partnership a part of that really kind of brought to the forefront the different types of grant opportunities that are out there and the various levels of support that are free for people to take advantage of. And then from the Housing Coalition perspective, if you're not happy with the way things are going, you don't want to just sit there and just complain about it. You should want to get up and do something about it.
Yep.
So the Huntington Township Housing Coalition is one of the only housing coalitions around where you can actually join, educate yourself on the issues that are currently presenting your community, the region, and figure out a way to try to find a solution to it. So I was a part of that organization for almost 6 years. I was on its steering committee. It educated me on the significance and the importance of diversifying the housing options. That's where I got so passionate about wanting to try to figure out a way to make ADUs more accessible to our homeowners, because really when you think about an ADU, it brings a whole nother level of options to the housing. And it actually kind of serves various generations. It doesn't just help young professionals. When you're looking at ADU, you're looking at a family. Let's say myself, when I have a family of 3 kids, I'm struggling. The taxes are not going anywhere down, and the cost of living is just increasing. I need extra income. With an ADU, I can get that extra income.
Can you explain to those that are watching how the advantages of an ADU? What is an ADU?
Oh, yeah, sure. Sorry, sometimes I just jump into that thinking everybody knows. But so ADU is an accessory dwelling unit, and it's something that there are regulations and kind of codes that are out there throughout the various townships in Long Island, but they vary. They're a lot of the times the current codes that are out there are restrictive in nature, and it's not necessarily based off of health and safety. it's really based off of trying to restrict the amount of accessory dwelling units that could happen in a neighborhood. So for me, when I look at an ADU, or accessory dwelling unit, it's one unit that's utilizing space in a home, whether it's upstairs, downstairs, or converted garage, to provide another level of housing that's needed for our community. We're in a housing crisis, and there are homeowners that want to be able to have that additional income, but there are so many restrictions around it and layers upon it that a lot of homeowners are fearful that if they even approach the topic, that they might get hit with fees or fines.
Yep.
Yep, exactly. And they just, it's not attainable. It's not accessible right now. So for me, as somebody who owned a home as a millennial, struggling to, try to figure out a way to get some more income in, that was such a good option for me that I wanted to try to make sure that there was legislation out there and requirements out there that were realistic and accessible to others to do that. Plus, again, it's when you think about what an ADU can do for a community, there are a lot of ADUs out there already. So sometimes I hear people say like ADUs, that's going to cause like the Queensification of Long Island. It's going to change the fabric of Long Island. That's just not the case, because ADUs are already a part of the fabric of Long Island. I'm sure if you ask, 10 people they either an uncle, an aunt, a cousin, a relative, a family friend, they probably lived in an ADU on Long Island, and that's pretty much how they probably started. That's how that was how they afforded to put some money in the bank and live here, and then have an actual nest egg to go in and purchase the new home. So it's already there. It's really about readdressing the current regulations that are out there and trying to make it more accessible to more people.
I find it very interesting, too, how millennials and Gen Zs would be so much more focused on the cost of a home rather than the experiences surrounding. So according to this survey, more people were focused on that affordability overall rather than the surrounding area.
Yeah.
So in essence, the two generations rather find a home hypothetically in Pennsylvania, or let's go even Midwest or South area, Southern area. You go to Georgia, you go to Georgia, or Tennessee, where it's cheaper there, but it could be in a more rural area or a more suburban but very low dense suburban area, in which case that there's not much in terms of enjoyment of bars or restaurants or nightclubs or you name it, experiences, etc. They rather go there because the homes are cheaper than, say, be somewhere on Long Island that has all these extra experiences, these opportunities with the city, the beaches, upstate, hiking, you name it, but yet it's too much.
It is. It's too
so
much.
I find that very unique, because one would think that people would flock and pay that price for the surrounding area, but Gen Z and millennials are not feeling that.
Well, they're not feeling that, and they also don't necessarily have access to the jobs that are going to pay the salaries that can afford the cost of living that this region has to offer. So, yeah, believe me, if I would love to stay on Long Island for the rest of my life, it's just not economically feasible for me.
Yeah.
And the pandemic just exacerbated all the existing issues that were there prior.
The pandemic definitely exposed.
Yep.
It exposed the truth in terms of the weaknesses of what was happening in our current state of affairs, because it allowed the remote work to occur. And then you also exposed the generations of the current generation, how comparatively to the cost that they're having to expend versus what our predecessors, our parent generation, grandparent generation paid. Yep. Do you have data on that?
Yeah. So Consumer Affairs actually pulls data from like the Department of Labor Statistics and the Bureau of Economics, and there's actually some. I mean, I looked it up just because I was really interested in identifying exactly what's the reason. Why do we feel like it's so much more challenging to start a family, to buy a home than we feel maybe our parents have been able to do it? And it's pretty crazy, the numbers. So like Gen Z and millennials are paying nearly 100% more for their homes than baby boomers did when they were 20.
Which is crazy.
Yeah.
That's a number. That's astronomical.
100% more. It's insane. So then there was more information that just was like making more sense of why the struggle is so much more real, let alone what you mentioned earlier, which was the societal impacts that have happened from the terrorist attack to with 9/11 and then
Great Recession, pandemic. Absolutely.
Yeah, aside what that does to a generation, you have Generation Z and millennials dollars today have 86% less purchasing power than those from when baby boomers were in their 20s. 86% less purchasing power.
And I love that because the purchasing power shows the comparison with dollars today versus dollars was.
Exactly.
86% less.
86%.
Wow.
Yeah, it's real. It's legit real struggling and real numbers. The data's there. It goes back to your point earlier. Like, why are we so positive?
Well, I think it's positive because we're looking at it saying, you guys messed up.
Yeah.
And now we can correct it.
Yeah,
because you know what? We're recognizing this data. Mm-hmm. We have the hard empirical evidence to support. But now we actually know the changes that need to be made. We know we need to have a larger inventory with housing. We know we need to curb the governmental overhead that's imposing these additional taxes. We know we need to have these different jobs that promote further work or high skilled and high wages. Mm-hmm. We know that we want to have financial literacy in education.
Yes,
we know we want to do budgeting in education. Mm-hmm. We know that college does not equal a high-paying job.
Yeah, there's actually some data on that too.
What does it say? I love that because that's a big thing.
It is. It's
our parents' generation has imputed in our head that you go to college, you have to go to college 4 years, get a bachelor's, and then it's going to be great afterwards. And it's not the case.
No, there's two components to that. There's a one component which has to do with the affordability, which I'll just throw this out there.
Yeah, let's hear this.
The cost of public and private school tuition has increased by 310 and 245% respectively since the 70s. 245%, 310% increase.
That's crazy.
And then you couple with that, back in the 70s, you didn't have as many people going to college.
Right, there's supply and demand.
Yeah, so back in the 70s, going to college, it made sense because there wasn't as big of a pool with college degrees coming out. So when you got your degree, you were snapped up pretty quickly. Now, college is kind of, like you said, you're being force-fed that the college is the way to go. And you're not only being force-fed by your parents, you're being force-fed by the school counselors and the public schools. And, it's because when you think about, how they get ranked and rated, which means there might be something that needs to change there, their graduation rate and success rate to go into secondary education is a part of that.
Correct.
So we need to start looking at the blue-collar jobs.
You're right. How many students actually go to Ivy League schools? How many students go to state school? How many students? You're totally right about that.
Instead of looking at the actual what's going to make a difference in someone's lives.
Who's making this much money?
Exactly.
That's what it should be.
The job attrition.
Yeah, that's all it should be.
Exactly.
Is our graduates, we have 80% making six figures by this age group.
Because we prepared them for the workforce needs of today. When you look at the emerging industries, offshore wind's huge on Long Island. And what that industry needs are not necessarily the college educated, it's the skills. The people with the right skills to do the labor. And really that's where I feel we, from a Millennial Leadership Coalition perspective, can actually have a greater impact.
What do you think about, there's two things we were talking about that have been bothering me. When I was a state legislator, this was something that I wanted on the state side, and then on the federal side, I wanted to see this happen. So first thing is going through the pathway program in high school, where it's recognizing skills and labor, then others that are going towards science and technology and the STEM, and then others that are going towards more of the social sciences with law or writing or that type of thinking, logic sided, where you're having students that you have your basics, almost like in college does now, where you have your core classes, and then after that your electives, right? Same thing is where you have your core classes, everyone understands. But let's be real, I don't need to know the Pythagorean theorem. I don't. I never used it. I never was going to go into that direction. I wasn't building rockets. That wasn't for me. But yet I had to go through those levels. Meanwhile, after ninth grade, what if you just pushed me down? Like as an attorney, like that's where my strengths were, was understanding the law, analysis, logical thinking, writing, being able to argue but see both sides and come back with those pointed contentions. Like that's my strength. But then there are others that they're in the skills set. So why are they dealing with the same thing, the STEM subject matter, when in reality they're just crushing it as electricians or carpenters or whatever it may be, mechanics, etc., where they're just stellar in that respect. Yeah. And then what happens is they come out of 18 years old, come out of high school, and they're ready to go, baby. I mean, they're ready to work.
I know.
And they're making cash instead of being in debt.
Yeah.
Think about that.
And there are programs out there that help that. There's apprenticeship programs that there are actually union and non-union apprenticeship programs, and there are programs that are offered by like BOCES and such. And really, I think a lot of
BOCES has been great with that.
Oh yeah, BOCES is phenomenal. And unfortunately, I don't know about you, but when I was going to school, there was an unfortunate stigma around kids that were going to BOCES, and that's something that needs to be addressed internally. As far
I think it's a lack of understanding.
Yeah, a lack of understanding.
It's all a lack of understanding
and awareness as to what those kids that when they go to BOCES, the opportunities that are out there for them, and how those wages that are in those opportunities are family sustaining wages.
Serious cash.
Yeah, serious cash. And there's only we're just feeling it and hearing it more and more. There's just a huge need. Even from when you think about like what's going on with the FAA and the airports. We need pilots. We need FAA operators.
Yeah.
Or else what? Like people can't fly anywhere. So
think about
there's just a huge, like you could literally go to a school now. I forget the name of the school. I want to say it's like in Queens, and they're literally guaranteeing a job.
Imagine
in FAA in the
just come here and you will be able,
or you'll get your tuition back. It's
like,
crazy, but it's the truth.
I think I hear that when I purchase like a couch.
Yeah, exactly.
It's or a bed, right? In 30 days, you
Yeah.
don't like your bed, return it, or your money back.
But
it's the same thing.
That's what happens when there's this real crisis and this need. Why wait for that though? You know what I mean? Like there should be these career pathways, this collaboration between industry and education and local and and public access schools and stuff like that. There just needs to be more. Again, it comes down to collaboration.
Yeah, and with the collaboration, I wanted to ask you about the higher education. So I said the one thing on the state education side, but now the higher education side. Do you think that those numbers that you cited before from the 1970s for higher education, both public and private, that has an effect because of federally backed loans?
Yeah, I would say the ease of access to those probably does. I don't know. I'm really not studied up on that, but you bringing that up to my attention and me just being familiar with the the FSA process and the Parent Plus and the Student Plus, and
I'm looking at it from a context of if you have everybody going to college, right? But that, and that the supply is becoming inflated, the federal, and then you can get loans through the federal government, and then those schools know that if these students don't pay them and default, the federal government is taking care of it.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't I jack up the costs?
Yeah. That's absolutely a fair point.
Right?
Absolutely a fair point. Yeah.
As a business side of things, why wouldn't I, as an institution, jack up the cost? Well, I know everyone's coming.
Yep.
And I'm going to get paid.
Yeah, whether it's a loan that the parent has to take out or a grant that the kids are going to get. Yeah, it's like that the ease of access to those financial options, I think, could have easily played a role in how quickly the cost of education.
And for me, I'm looking at it saying that the harsh answer is removing all federal loans,
or even just I'm trying to think of the word, not repealing them, but like working them out again, like really kind of taking a deeper dive.
Just revising?
Yeah, revising, like looking at,
like who gets the loans or how or the amount they get.
Do a complete analysis on how these loans have been utilized since the 70s till today and the correlation that has on the price.
I wonder if there's more, like almost, that's a good point, because then the amount of loans that were issued in 1970s versus and then how much did it increase?
Effect. Yeah,
and then I wonder, does it peak when you saw the schools peak? Like if the schools, hypothetically, if the schools peak in 1992, where you see a huge jump of 13%, now all of a sudden the loans go up like 10%, and then they catch up. So you see them keeping up with the schools.
They're basically gauging their tuition expense based off of the accessibility of the loans.
Right.
Yeah. No, that's definitely, I feel like, could be a huge component to that.
I'm telling you, I think I think we're onto something, because that's something that's been bothering me. I've been looking at for years when I was a state legislator, and I was saying in my head, I'm like, it's almost, you got to make that tough decision and call it like you see it, because just fundamental business. As any business person, if you owned a business, you're saying in your head that if I know I have all these people who want to attend or come into my business or come into my restaurant,
margins are going to go up,
right? And then I know that their credit card is, no matter what, is going to get backed and paid.
Yeah. And it's not all schools. Like I got to say, SUNY and CUNY, I think they are
clutch.
They're leading in really trying to make it accessible in a positive and meaningful.
That's the reason
way.
I'm a SUNY guy.
Yeah, I went to CUNY Baruch for 2 years.
There you go.
I did go to CUNY. I know that people are saying they did, but they didn't. I went there for 2 years, and then I transferred over to Dowling. I got my bachelor's in accounting from Dowling, and then Dowling closed down not too long after that, unfortunately, and then I got my MBA from Hofstra. So, I started my secondary education at the CUNY system.
That's what I'm saying, man.
And that was incredibly affordable.
And it gave you great education.
Good
I'm telling you,
foundation.
SUNY was the same thing for me, where I was all about it, feeling it. I mean, and that's exactly what we need to keep fostering, is that mentality of going into state and city schools pushing for people who are going to go into higher education, but utilizing that way where they're taking externships and internships that allow them to capitalize on their wage growth.
Yeah, and the SUNY system is great. They work closely with government. They work closely with industry, and they're doing that work now to try to identify the best way to prepare those students for the needs of the careers and industries today.
What are your thoughts about out of high school students going directly into businesses as specifically as apprenticeships?
I think it's great.
Businesses,
I think
though, not just the blue collar side, but white collar side too.
No, honestly, it's I think the more options, the more opportunities. So
I love that.
Yeah, so you have to give those options out there and you got to promote them equally. You can't just just because you might know one option better doesn't mean that that's going to be the best option for whatever whoever the kids are you're talking to, whatever the case may be. You should promote them equally, and that's it's a skill to do that because you tend to lean towards advocating for the thing but it's when it comes down to the people that are interacting with the students when they're making those decisions, whether they go to high school, whether they go to college, whether they look to enter the workforce or they go to some type of apprenticeship program, whatever the case may be, you got to approach it with the same level of enthusiasm and a detail. So
I think it's great.
Yep.
Now tell me, if people want to join MLC, how do they get a hold of you?
So I actually created a LinkedIn group page recently. So that's actually the best way to LinkedIn is one of I would say, the most integral tools for a professional in this generation.
Really?
Right.
Why do you believe that?
So I have had so much success with navigating the platform. I'll give you a quick story just to kind of cap it up with my why I'm so big on LinkedIn. So when I first joined the county, I joined the county like 3 weeks prior to the pandemic hitting. And then I was assigned to lead the team that was procuring the PPE for Suffolk County, for our first responders, our healthcare professionals. And during that time, PPE was scarce, like the N95s and the surgical grade gowns that were needed. It was extremely difficult and challenging to do that. Shortly after it became real that the PPE that we needed to really battle the virus wasn't available like stateside, the federal government, President Trump at the time, he created this task force. And he put this guy, Rear Admiral John Palachuk, in charge of manning that task force. And he was basically in charge of the military-grade distribution system that would distribute the PPE as it comes into the country, or as they find pockets throughout the United States. So when I heard that, I did some research, and that kind of led me to believe that the county itself was not going to have access to the PPE that, let's say, a hospital system would or a state government would. So I reached out to the Admiral via LinkedIn, and he actually responded.
No way.
Real, no joke. And from that, I got some great intel that was able to turn around to, then at the time, Congressman Zeldin, and he was able to take that intel, analyze it internally, bring it to POTUS, and within 2 days, Suffolk County was getting 200,000 N95s.
Wow.
Yeah, through a LinkedIn.
Message.
And that's just one example.
I love that story.
It's unreal. It was unreal. Do I think it'll ever happen again? Hopefully not in the sense of the COVID stuff, but there are other components that are just very unique and specific to members of MLC's needs that I was able to facilitate meaningful relationships and connections with via LinkedIn.
So LinkedIn, MLC, Millennial Leadership Coalition. They can find that group on LinkedIn and access it, request to follow.
Yeah, the admin, you'll get approved. It's really about, we want to have millennials and Gen Z involved. But if you are someone that's not in the millennial or Gen Z generation, but you're like-minded in the mission, then we'd love to have you involved, because there's a lot of experience that comes with people that are with outside of our generation that really, when it comes to, and that brings up actually one of the points that I wanted to make from the Walton study. There was those top 3 challenges. So the first challenge was affordability in housing. The second challenge was affordability in education.
Yep.
The third challenge, knowing the right people, access to the right connections. We're doing what we can with the college and the housing, but I know through the network that I have established and the senior advisors that I have on board with MLC that we can help millennials and Gen Z gain access to the right people to help them in whatever career they're in or whatever their goals are professionally or even personally in some instances. We have access to the network that can really make a difference for them.
MLC is there to help them make an impact.
Yep.
And that's crucial. I love it.
Yeah, we're basically connecting young professionals to opportunities, and we utilize LinkedIn in a lot of ways to do that. So,
so those interested, follow Millennial Leadership Coalition on LinkedIn.
Yep, or look me up, John Schneidawin, and connect with me personally on LinkedIn and message me. LinkedIn's the way to go. I'm telling you.
Perfect. I'll put that in my in the link.
Oh,
all right.
Perfect.
So I'll include that in the link as well.
You can put both links actually. That'd be awesome. MLC's link for the group, and then my personal link.
Fantastic.
Sweet.
John, thanks so much for having.
No, thank you for having me. This is
I
awesome.
appreciate
I
it.
really appreciate
This
it.
has been,
I feel like we could go for like hours, man.
Yeah, this is great. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
You're the best, buddy.
All right.